with product leadership. So we want to help women and other underrepresented voices in product to grow, lead, and connect with one another so that we can create a future where everyone is welcome to lead, no matter what they look like, no matter how they think, no matter their background, so that we can thrive in more empowered teams, and so that product leadership doesn't look all white and male and heterosexual, basically, in the end. Next, so we have a very diverse team. Lots of more people are getting involved, which is really exciting. Everyone is a volunteer from the bottom up in this organization, and everything will always be free. There's lots to do. We have a monthly volunteering call. Please do join if you're interested in getting involved, even in a small way. There's always something that you can help with to make impact towards our goal. These are the themes. So the theme right now is power, and there's a lot of meaning behind each of these, which I don't have time to explain right now, but we're really, really excited about continuing to develop around how these connect with our mission and vision. Yeah, I think that's probably all I can share on that. I'll turn the time over to Katrin. Are you doing the introduction? Yeah?
Yes, Edmonia.
Okay. Edmonia is doing the introduction. Okay,
Hi
I'll
there.
turn
So I'm
it to
having some technical
Edmonia.
problems. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
You can?
Yes, we can.
Take it away.
Okay, sorry about that. So now to introduce Katrin.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that. Lovely. So today we're really pleased to have Katrin with us. Katrin is, as you can see, the founder of Energized. She's a fantastic therapist. She's going to teach us today a lot about regulation. She's worked with over 100 companies, and she's used to working with executive sort of leaders to help prevent burnout, help to look after your well-being. She's extremely accomplished, and we're really thrilled to have her today and pleased that she can spend some time with us and teach us what some of these amazing phrases such as somatic and regulation, neurosystem sort of regulation mean. So without anything else, I'd love to introduce Katrin to start our session, please.
Thank you so much. Fantastic to be here. Honestly, I've been so looking forward to be hosting this session. It's going to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, so I'm going to try my best to drop all the clinical jargon, etc., and really translate everything that I'm talking about into everyday kind of language for you, and also make it very clear how important it is to know about this for really effective leadership. So for yourself, first and foremost, but also for your team as well. So I'm going to just share my slides with you now, and I'm going to get started. And you are going to have the chance, hopefully, I'm usually quite good with my timings, to really ask some questions as well. So if you do have any questions in between, just jot them down, and we'll get to them at the end. So hopefully everybody can see my slides fine now. Can I just see very quickly thumbs up? Yeah, excellent, fantastic, because you're going to need a little bit of visual guidance, at least, delving into this topic of nervous system regulation. So I'm the founder of Energized. It's a family business. So I run this business with my daughter since 2 years, but now also my son has joined part-time too. So yeah, it's a little growing business. I have worked in so many different global organizations, especially in leadership development. But with Energized, I have got that mission and that vision to bring much more practical approaches to leadership teams, etc. So less of the theory kind of teaching and much more of practical application. So what am I talking about? We're going to start, first of all, just gauging a little bit what audience I've got in front of me. So Katrin, if you don't mind, if you launch poll 1, I just want to gauge a little bit how familiar you are with nervous system regulation. So you've maybe never heard of it before, and that's absolutely fine as well. You've maybe dabbled with it a bit, maybe heard about it, or you're maybe very familiar already. So please, if you don't mind, just put in what instantly kind of speaks to you, or what would be your response to that question. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully I can see the results at the moment. Don't know whether that's to do with the fact that I'm screen sharing, Katrin.
I think when you go inside border, you'll be able to vote, and then you see the result of every other person that's
myself as well. So I'm obviously very familiar, so I've just clicked that. Hopefully that's helped. Okay, great. Thank you, Katrin. Didn't realize I have to participate too. So yeah, so the right mix across this group. And thank you everybody, by the way, who is spending their very precious time learning about this topic. So whether you are very unfamiliar with it or familiar, I'm going to try and capture everyone today in the session. So I'm going to just go through a few essentials for you to kind of maybe know about, and then I'm going to go into some specifics. So for those people that are already quite familiar with it, I'm very confident that you're going to learn and hear some very new things today as well. So thank you for that. Basically, what we're talking about today is how much we often in leadership development thinking about developing in terms of strategies, in terms of mindset. So my background is clinical and business psychology. So I have done several degrees and everything is kind of often based around mindset. But over the last 6 years especially is where I myself have really kind of become a lot more familiar with nervous system regulation and how powerful this is. And I'll show you a bit of statistics later on as well. So it's very, very difficult to strategize yourself out of a dysregulated state. And that also ripples very quickly into your team. So we'll later on talk about co-regulation as well, which is that effect that I'm talking about, how our nervous system state very quickly translates into the whole team. And that can have a positive effect, but it can very often also have very negative effects. And that's obviously what we want to learn and get better at to work with that. So today I'm going to just do a little bit of a whistle stop tour. So we're going to look at what the 4 leadership stress responses are. So these are typical stress responses, and this applies to your everyday life, not just leadership. But what I teach now is where I translate this very specifically into how does this actually play out in a leadership context. I have led previously a fully accredited mental health training academy on behalf of the biggest mental health charity in the UK here. So I also have seen and lived this kind of leadership experience, by the way, as well. I'm not just coming in from a purely theoretical angle. In fact, I feel like the practical experience is actually much more powerful here. So we're going to be exploring then a bit about co-regulation, so how that ripples into your team climate, and how to consciously potentially shift your energy and your inner state, so you can very consciously rebalance yourself and kind of recognize where something is becoming an overdone strength and has actually turned potentially into a blind spot. I'd call it blind spot rather than a full-on weakness. And we'll also see that these stress responses are actually initially always very positive, protective responses. So it's very human to have them. So don't judge yourself when I kind of ask you to get involved later on a bit more as well. This is very much part of the human reality. And then we're going to look at how impactful this really is. So we're going to look briefly into some hard and softer return on investments there as well, why it's really worth to invest in your leadership development. I really wish that I would have known this more than 20 years ago when I first started out in business psychology. It would have really protected me from so many near burnout situations where I had like complete energy collapse. I experienced this as a student already. I experienced it later as a mom. I'm a mom of 3 children, sort of nearly grown now, but it can happen in any kind of context. And then later, certainly in my professional career again as well. So what I'm teaching you today is, like, in a short nutshell, what I really wish I would have known 25 years ago would have saved me a lot of pain and agony. And then I'm going to just briefly share with you as well what you can do in terms of next steps and learning things. And I'm going to share a lot of free resources with you as well. If you want to go a little bit deeper to what we can only kind of cover sort of on a more superficial level today, obviously, because it's an introduction. So the 4 leadership responses, let's get started with that now. They might be quite familiar to you already. I've really noticed over the last few years that this is becoming much more common language, and people are talking a lot about stress, survival mode, and you might have come across these 4 different stress responses. I'll kind of ask you in a moment to, so get ready again to get involved with another poll. But just before we go into those particular stress responses, just want to highlight that our nervous system is very, very powerful, and we don't know enough about it. It's stuff that we should really learn, in my opinion, from our youngest years, and almost have that part of the curriculum at school as well, because it influences your energy levels, how you respond to emotional challenges. So you might have realized in your own life that sometimes you respond to almost the same triggering situation completely different. So this essentially comes back to your current nervous system state, and then it affects very important key functions like sleep, like digestion. So very quickly that these get disrupted if our nervous system is not in a great state. And then also it has these huge ripple effects into our immune system as well. So this is really important stuff that I'm talking about. And then it also affects us very quickly cognitively. So how we make decisions, how many creative ideas we can produce, etc. So in that stress response, basically our core neocortex, our most highest level functioning part of the brain, is very quickly almost shutting down. So it's not a good place to be in when we are dysregulated. So when we're balanced, almost everything in our life is better. When dysregulated, the opposite is unfortunately true. Nothing feels quite right. So when we talk about nervous system agility is what I specifically teach now. So not just regulation, but I go into a very individualized approach and teaching people how to really learn agility here. So what does that mean? First of all, our nervous system is not just the brain. We have our central nervous system as well, which basically is our runs along our spine, and we have our peripheral, so our wider nervous system too. And most of that is afferent. So what that means is most of the signals are actually being sent to the brain and not from the brain to the body. And what that means is, so there's a lot of psychological research now, and some research says it's even less than 5% now, that is under our conscious influence, as in how we behave and what we do during the day is only under a very small percentage under the power of our brain. The majority is actually unconscious regulation on autopilot of our unconscious nervous system. And these patterns are therefore so powerful, and they often established in our youngest years. So how we grow up, what experiences we have can really shape our nervous system responses as well. But overall, due to those kind of different experiences, there's sort of these 4 dominant stress responses, but we all have a very unique combination of those, especially when we are under extreme pressure. So I'll share that with you later on as well, but you can actually do a free assessment where you can identify your unique stress signature, I call it, and get to know your own stress responses a bit more, because awareness is the first step in that nervous system agility. And once you kind of learn where you go under huge stress and strain, then you can also become much more conscious about how to shift back into your optimum zone of performance and how to consciously rebalance this. So this is all really exciting stuff. And yeah, it's really helped me now. I can confidently say I am no longer under the risk of burning out, because I have got such huge acute awareness of this, and I know exactly what to do in situations when, you know, my nervous system also runs riot again and away with me. But agility is really about then taking positive steps and back into balance. So really, this is potentially your blueprint for what I call real work-life success. So I don't talk about work-life balance. It always swings back and forth a bit, but work-life success is where we ultimately don't sacrifice one too much over the other at all. Right, so this is a bit of a foundation for you there. These are the nervous system states now that I keep referring to already. And what you can see here is the energy map or compass that I work with, and when I work more closely with teams, with individuals as well. And there you have your 4 different nervous system states. So what can happen to us is we sort of pivot, like move around that optimum performance zone, our yellow zone. It's often called the social engagement zone in nervous system science, but I just often call it the zone of optimum performance. That's where we are our best selves. But very easily, it can happen that we are getting thrown out of that middle zone of balance, and we can either go into overactivation. So this is often called in nervous system science hypoarousal or hyperactivation, but because it's so much clinical jargon, I just call it overactivation. It's essentially too much energy running through your system. And the opposite can happen as well. So you can go into underactivation, where your dorsal vagal nerves are responsible for almost like a complete shutdown, where you preserve as much energy as possible. And both those activation sort of directions, you can split in 2 different types again. So you've probably heard about the fight or flight response. So they are both overactivation responses, and they play out slightly different. We'll explore that in a moment. I'll explain this all, I promise. But yeah, we've also got underactivation responses. So one is called the freeze response, where your body basically feels like it can no longer keep itself safe by either fighting the danger or the threat or running away from it, as in the flight response. So the kind of next step almost is then to kind of contain as much energy and almost like play dead. That's how it would work in kind of in natural settings, in order to survive whatever is threatening you right now. And that's what the nervous system is really for. It is to protect you, to keep you safe. Unfortunately, it's been very effective up until about 100,000, maybe even 1,000 years ago, because the threats and the dangers that we encountered on a daily or weekly basis is where we needed to have that overactivation. So adrenaline, for example, noradrenaline running through our system, all that kind of underactivation of the freeze response. But nowadays we've got so many modern pressures and stresses. So our situation has changed quite a lot, and it's just what our nervous system perceives to be a threat. So our nervous system can't necessarily distinguish between a predator attacking us and a difficult email landing in our inbox. And my guess is that there's far more dangerous, far more difficult emails landing in your inbox rather than you being faced with a predator. This is where these kind of responses come from. We've got freeze response, and then we've got the fawn response. So this is where we are going into peacekeeping mode, where we no longer really take care and spend attention on ourselves and our own needs, but we're actually just making sure that everybody else is fine. And very often this is also when we have to appease people around us to keep ourselves safe as well. So that's where that fawn response is coming from. And it's quite normal for us to kind of pivot in that optimum performance zone, a little bit up, down, left, right during the day, and sometimes to go a bit into that nervous system activation, over or under activation. And that generally is really positive and really helpful, but it can become chronic, and then it can become very problematic for ourselves. So that's what we're kind of exploring now. And most of us have a dominant stress response. So again, if you want to find out what yours is in more depth and detail, you can do that with the resources that I share with you at the end of it. But for now, if Katrin, you don't mind, bring up the poll. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot, just a bit of playing with that as well. So I'm going to bring up the 4 responses for you to participate in. And so the first one, in a leadership context, in a work context, would be, so if you fight, you are somebody who under pressure pushes even harder, takes more control, drives real with urgency, makes fast decisions maybe, and focusing very much constantly on solutions. The flight response would be where you keep yourself busy, stay very independent as well, and you at any cost avoid stalling or stopping. But it might also sometimes be where we are avoiding sort of uncomfortable conflicts, so we're more like running away from what is dangerous. The freeze response would be where we completely slow down, where we go into risk assessment mode, analytic mode, and where we wait for kind of clarity before moving any further. And the fawn response would be where you pay most attention to keeping and maintaining good relationships, where you gather maybe a lot of feedback, maintain key sort of goal that you want to do there. And I'm just gonna thank you. You're sharing the results already. So this is just a little bit of a check-in for yourself. And like I said, this is just a quick snapshot. And we're all a bit different here. And none of these are purely brilliant, and none of these are purely bad either. So again, very human approach to this here. It's just recognizing when these are potentially strengths for us in leadership and when they become really counterproductive as well. So that's what nervous system agility is all about. So thank you for everybody participating here. I hope that you're enjoying this little bit of self-discovery and self-awareness exercise. So I'll just showcase now. So bear in mind what you might have put in, but also, and what I do with teams is often really increase emotional intelligence in the room by recognizing and completely appreciating that I might be a fighter. I might be going into that immediate fight kind of response, and somebody who's maybe on the freeze response opposite, we might have actually quite quickly conflicts with them, or we might really struggle to understand where they're coming from. So again, this kind of energy compass here is very much broadening our awareness, not just for ourselves, but also understanding other people around us much better. So the context here is that first, they often really help us to create immense success, but then they can become our blind spot, and they can also become our burnout driver. So for myself, just to kind of maybe share from my angle, I've always been very much a fighter. I walk towards the fire. I always try and find immediately solutions for everything and anything. And as I kind of discovered this more over the last few years, so I go into fight response first, and when that no longer works for myself, then I quite quickly pivot into the fawn response as well. But what I realized was that I hardly ever went into the flight response. So that was my weakest one as such. And I have now realized that this is increasingly becoming my protective factor. So I teach you a very quick shift protocol in a moment. But what I do in that kind of shift protocol moment is often check in what would be my habit right now is find solutions, go towards the fire. And now I'm recognizing that by sometimes just taking a step back and going consciously into that flight mode, as in, do I really need to make this problem my problem? Do I really need to find a solution? Or can I maybe utilize other people around me better? Honestly, this has been so helpful in me kind of rebalancing myself so quickly in the moment. So I just wanted to kind of highlight they are all positive. They can be also negative as well. So maybe, first little aha moment there for yourself as well, and just analyzing that for you. So just very briefly, just want to kind of highlight a bit more how this plays out with the 4 different responses. So the mobilizer is often very decisive. When it's an adaptive strength, it's where people are, you're potentially not avoiding having hard conversations, and they're often very important to have, especially as a team leader, and that you might be a really great, powerful advocate for teams' needs. But when it goes into that stress overdrive, it can also become a situation where we micromanage, where we create false urgency, where it's not even necessary or always, and that control can also often stifle autonomy in the team as well. So just as a little bit of a idea for you, the flight response, so that's what I call the strategizer often, and you can download a free book, by the way, by the end, and there's a lot more explanation in my book, so I'm just doing a bit of a whistle tour here. So again, this is where if as long as you are on the upper level of your optimum performance zone, then you might be somebody who's got high energy, who sets a really great pace, and that you also quick to pivot when needed. But again, as a stress overdrive response, it might be that you're not always focused on the top priority. So we're just busy, but not necessarily productive. So being aware of that. The freeze response is what I call the perfectionist. And interestingly, this is where we're often really coming sort of or focusing our energies on ourselves. So it's all about self-preservation. So this might be a situation where we have very thorough analysis before making a decision. So we're really taking a good step back and trying to create a bit of distance, a little bit of a perspective on there. But again, as a stress overdrive response, we might actually become quite emotional and unavailable for people because we're so focused on ourselves and making everything just perfect in the moment. And for those that are a little bit more familiar with perfectionism, this can backfire in most cases. So perfectionism is really something to look out for. It often is counterproductive rather than really effective in the moment. So just being mindful about that as well. And then we've got the fawn, the peacekeeper. So this is where we are potentially really great at increasing psychological safety in our team, in facilitating true collaboration. So I do sometimes also facilitate collaboration workshops, and most of you will probably be nodding your heads saying how difficult but important collaboration, true collaboration, and not just coordination is. So yeah, people that are going into that fawn response might be really good at that, but it can also very often come at the cost of your own well-being. So very poor boundaries, maybe where you accommodate too many and unreasonable requests by team members, etc. So again, just a little bit of a highlight here, how it's got basically two coins to that response as well. Two sides of a coin is what I meant to say. Right, so the blind spot effect, in your stress response, you believe you're being effective. So most of us know under stress, we are acting, thinking, feeling, behaving very, very differently. And we genuinely believe this is the most effective way. This is just what we've often learned in our young years, how to survive situations. So no wonder we get that reinforcement. And then often it really helps us build great careers and having initial really great success. But where we might think as a fighter, I'm being decisive, holding standards, or the flighter thinks I'm being action-oriented, efficient. The freezer thinks I'm being thoughtful and strategic. And the fawner might be having the perception of I'm being really collaborative and empathic. Your team might experience something completely different when it's become a severe and chronic response, is what I'm referring to. So we want to be mindful of those blind spots. How these states show up in leadership. Rather than going into all four responses, I've summarized this a little bit more. So if you manage to stay in that middle zone of social engagement or in your optimum zone of performance, then you are not only present with people around you, but you're also fully present with yourself. So this is all about connections with yourself and with others. And this is usually where true innovation and sustainable performance can happen. So you want to be in that zone as much as possible, but we can obviously go into overactivation. So this is where micromanaging, reactive way of being, urgency-driven ways come out, or in underactivation where people maybe perceive us as a leader of being quite checked out. So we can sometimes look on the surface very calm and composed, but really we are actually in full shutdown mode already. So that can sometimes create uncertainty, confusion in team as well. So be mindful of that. The validation trap is what I kind of referred to earlier on a bit already, that we often get reaffirmed in our life. And yes, in many ways, this really does help as well, but we need to also recognize where it becomes way too much and really chronic, and always kind of having an assessment as well. Does this create real long-term sustainable results, or is this just in the short term? So yeah, again, this would have helped me massively many years ago when I was a leader of 3 different teams that had very, very different needs as well, etc. So not just thinking short-term results, but also in the long run. It really is about maintaining good relationships, obviously, and success and performance. So your stress response, first of all, it's about checking in with yourself, but then it's also about how it's affecting your team. And we're going to come to the next part now, which is called co-regulation. And there's a lot of science behind it. And don't worry, I'm not going to bombard you again with much of that. You can share with you later on, learn loads more about this if you want to with me. But this is really about how contagious your nervous system is in the best possible way, but also in the worst possible way as well. It's about recognizing those differences. So it's that transmission effect. And then we're going to learn in a moment as well what to actually do when you recognize in yourself, okay, I have definitely gone into overactivation, or I'm definitely in underactivation and shutdown mode. So how do we shift back, first and foremost, ourselves into that zone of optimum performance, so we can kind of co-regulate and guide the rest of our team back into it as well. And there's 3 different channels how we kind of ripple that effect into our team. So we're going to have a look at that in a moment now. So you've got that physiological basis, and if you've studied a little bit of psychology, you might have heard about mirror neurons. So they are genuine neurons that we can detect in our brains, and they basically, when somebody else is going through a really stressful time, they help us empathize, and with that group cohesion, but it really means that we are very quickly feeling almost the same what that person's feeling as well. So there is really solid neuroscience behind this, how powerful they are. So if somebody else is experiencing pain, for example, then we also, through those mirror neurons, can experience even physical pain, never mind emotional and mental pain as well. So this tension that you might be feeling and thinking you're hiding quite well, might actually be more contagious than you think. And this even happens in virtual calls and meetings like this potentially as well, just by the mere way of how you speak in terms of your voice, your body language, etc. It's even more powerful in real life face-to-face interactions, because there's quite a lot of electromagnetic fields that we emanate, and we can actually sense this if we are fairly close to another person as well. So there is real biological and physiological kind of transmission happening. But then also through things like behavioral modeling, I probably don't need to go into that much depth and detail here. For most of you having some form of own leadership experience, or having experienced that with leaders in your life as well, you will probably immediately have a couple of examples readily available to yourself as well, where basically the behavior of the leader very quickly then shapes how the rest of the team is behaving as well. And that overall really ripples into a whole environmental state and sort of what the kind of whole climate and culture in the team is as well. So with regards to the next poll now, and we're going to come to that. So Katrin, if you could launch that in a moment. But just wanted to kind of summarize here what I've spoken about is you need to start with your own nervous system, ideally first and foremost, because you can't help people co-regulate back into that zone, that yellow zone of optimum performance, if you're not in it yourself either. So again, this is obviously anonymous, so please do share and contribute. So what state might you have in? So if you just think about your own experience in the past, don't mention any names, obviously. So he might have made you really psychologically unsafe. What state were you in those kind of moments? What happened to you? Maybe just a little bit of self-reflection here. If you could put some answers into the word cloud. Threat, nervous, worried. Thank you. So there was in fawn, anxious. I can't often see the whole answer in the word cloud, unfortunately. It's probably because I'm sharing the screen. So thank you. Yeah, I can see all the full answers now. So thank you for just kind of reflecting a little bit there. Unfortunately, but fortunately as well, we are often learning our best leadership principles from some of those negative impacts that we might have had ourselves as well. I certainly took a lot away from some leaders that I had in the past, where I thought, oh goodness me, that was really not as it was probably intended by that person. So I learned a lot myself how to do better there. So yeah, just wanted you to reflect on that. And there's lots of research really that's showing that our leader, our team manager, is potentially having more influence on our mental health than even our partner. So yeah, it's very influential. Of course, I mean, we are spending most of our waking hours at work. Our leader has a lot of influence over our career progression, etc. So it's not surprising. So yeah, This all really, really matters. So I just want to now move on and share with you the shift framework, which is a really simplified way. And this is something that I work with loads of people now, just basically teaching people how to do this in literally just a minute or less sometimes. At the beginning, it takes a little bit longer, kind of just going through different steps. But this stands for sensing. So where are you on that compass right now? So the assessment that I'm going to share with you in a moment is where you get your dominant stress response, but obviously we can shift. So for me, it's often as well in a different context with different types of people, I might be having a slightly different response. So the first bit is really recognizing where am I on that energy compass. Then the next one is to identify what would be my usual habitual response now. So I shared with you earlier on, for me, it used to be the fight response. So I had a lot of immediately autopilot kind of ways of dealing with the situation. And now I've realized just that second step of checking in on my habit and then making a conscious shift, as in, okay, I'm trying really not to do that now. What would be actually right now a much more protective response? And as I shared with you, for me, it's often actually going into the flight response. So not always running towards the fire, but sometimes it's also okay to run away from the fire. And then there's really specific interventions. And this is where I've specialized my approach so much more, because often what you hear is generic well-being tips and guidance, as in just take a breath. And yes, breathing is very, very powerful nervous system regulation tool, but you actually need to use this slightly different when you're on overactivation compared to underactivation. So I teach people now what intervention is actually the right one. So you're not making yourself worse as well. So the unfortunate situation is with some of those things, if you do it not matched to your correct state, you can't even make yourself feel worse as well. And then the last steps are focusing back, coming back into the present moment, and also just checking, has my intervention actually worked? And then this is more like ongoing work that I do with people, but just taking a little bit of a track here, taking some notes, what's working better, what's not working so well. So basically that's the 5 steps here, just a little recap of what I've just explained there. So sensing is doing mostly a body check. So it's not just about our mind. This is often what's happening in my body right now. Where am I on that energy compass? So physical cues are really powerful to guide you there. Am I in overactivation right now, or am I in underactivation? Then we're going into that habitual check. So just review, like, again, what you put maybe into your poll response earlier on. That would be probably your default stress response. But the more quickly and more often you recognize, then you can then intervene and catch a lot earlier and, you know, just kind of rebalance earlier in the moment as well. So this is earliest intervention of its most beautiful kind. The interventions for fight or flight, so in overactivation. So I just mentioned a second ago, breath is very powerful. And it's because it's one of those ancient kind of brain activities that we also can take conscious control of. So it's almost our direct path into our nervous system. But if we take a deep breath and we're already overactivated, that puts us further into sympathetic activation. So we actually need to focus as much as possible and extend our exhales as much as possible. So that activates our parasympathetic nervous system and really helps with coming back into that yellow zone. So extended exhales is what's important, not taking lots of breaths in. Peripheral vision expansion is another thing. So you'll see later on, you can learn all of this more on YouTube. I do lots of videos there as well. How you can actually do this in a moment. So I do a lot of guided practice here. But again, this is stuff that can work within 60 seconds or less. So this doesn't take half an hour. This is totally office friendly. And for real life, you know, everything that I teach is always with practical kind of techniques in mind. So interventions for the freeze under activation is bilateral stimulation. So stimulating, so tapping, for example, left and right. And there's different techniques, again, that I teach, but that bilateral stimulation in your brain basically really helps you to activate your energies again when you've actually gone into shutdown. And sensory activations really help here as well. So these are those somatic techniques that Edmonia mentioned earlier on as well. So I do a lot of neurosensory work. We have got not just 5 powerful senses, but loads more, but I teach the 3 essential additional ones. So I basically teach 8 sense approaches where you bring in your proprioception, your vestibular senses as well. And they are really the key to great performance and better well-being and mental health in our workplaces, where most of the time, for example, we just sit, and that's not just bad for our physical health, but even more so for our mental capacities, etc. So some of those techniques, they take 1 or 2 minutes and they can make a huge difference because they work with that 95% of your neurosensory system that I spoke about at the beginning. For the phone underactivation, so this is often where I do a lot of work with people around healthy boundary setting. So bringing back, calling the energy a bit more back to yourself as well. And again, like that's where we often do a bit more mindset work as well, internal inquiries, etc., to reestablish that sense of self. And that should really be always kept separate from others as well. So I have not got enough time because we want to do Q&A in a moment as well. So I have put this QR code on here, and you can just check out later on my YouTube channel. But I teach, for example, this 90-second breathing technique to bring you back into the moment and full cognitive capacity again. So this is called the physiological sigh, and it's something that I use all the time now in between online meetings, my kind of own training deliveries, etc. This is really powerful stuff. So yeah, works really well. So just wanted to kind of highlight to you, you can learn all of this with me, with my guidance. And then we are also now focusing back. That's the next step of the shift framework. So am I really truly present with my team, or am I just sort of kind of present or just here? So you want to come back into that moment as well. And then what you can do, and this is really helpful, especially if you want to develop that proper nervous system agility, is tracking patterns and kind of seeing what is starting to work well. So like I said, I tracked this quite a lot over the last few years for myself, and I have found some techniques that just work brilliantly for myself. I teach a whole range of different techniques, but everybody's a little bit different there, as long as it's state matched though. So you're very clear, am I in overactivation and underactivation, then you know, you can learn those techniques that work best in the moment. So just for the last couple of minutes now, wanted to highlight how impactful this is. So there is hard and soft returns on investment of your time, energy spent on learning this. So whether it is your team's cognitive capacity, productivity, there is a lot of research that is showing how you can, with these relatively small techniques, come back and really level up your productivity. And what happens in teams is that retention rates are much better, your average turnover costs are reduced, and you just get much more team stability, and psychological safety is a key factor there as well. So cultural transformation is also one of those real benefits. You will see much better mental health in terms of preventative measures as well as interventions as well. And yeah, again, we're back to that really important aspect of trust and collaboration, which is the foundation for all the good stuff that we want to achieve in our teams. But it's really about for you yourself as well. I mean, I have found this so freeing. I mean, for many years, you know, I've got such a strong academic psychological background. I never felt quite safe and protected from burnout whatsoever. But yeah, I am in that place now where I can say confidently, this will not happen to me anymore, because I have such acute awareness of this, and I want to share this really as wide as possible with people. So you're going to get these compounding effects. Just want to kind of show this very briefly, and we're going to go to Q&A in a moment. Just wanted to kind of also share with you that there is lots of those free resources and other ways that you can learn this more if you're interested. So hopefully this has been an interesting, fascinating whistle-stop tour for you for now. But I have written to nervous system guides. One, the blue one you can see, is specifically for leaders in mind. So if you want to explore your own stress response a bit more, there's also a free quiz that you can take, which will give you a very clear indication as to what is your first and maybe your second most dominant stress response. And then in that guide, you get a lot of information actually what to do with that kind of assessment as well. You can follow me on YouTube as well, where I share obviously a lot of this totally for free all the time. I upload a new video every week and expand my portfolio there. I'm also just launching in a few days the Energized Reset. So this is just a 14-day shortcut program. If you really don't know where to start with nervous system regulation and where you are, this is where I teach all the good stuff that I just said. And this is state matched techniques where you learn very quickly how to identify where you are and what's the right and maybe the not so good technique to do as well. And they're all stealth techniques. So they are things that you can do sometimes even during meetings, believe me or not. So it's not weird stuff that we have to step outside and spend 20 minutes on. This is completely all made for real life. And today I'm also I'm doing an early bird offer anyway, but if you type in the code FPL10, I will give all of you 10% off until midnight today. If you want to join this, it also comes with a community, so you'll actually get some more direct guidance. It's not just a course, it's a whole reset program, and it's designed like a retreat from home. Just to kind of recognize we're all in stressful roles, most of us, and that we sometimes really need to do something for ourselves. I also offer executive coaching one-on-one. So again, you can apply for the first session completely for free. And all those links are on the website. I'll show them to you in a moment. That just skipped a second. We're also going to run a luxury leadership retreat in September. So you can put your name down on the kind of register and your interest there already. And I do corporate training offers as well. So again, that's downloadable on the website. And here's the kind of links for you. Some of you might want to just quickly take the QR code, but all the other links are there as well. I know some people are very wary these days. These are safe, I can promise you. But that leaves us now for the last 10 minutes, yes, to take some questions now where I can talk to you directly. So thank you so much for everybody who's spent their precious time here and has learned about nervous system regulation. And we're going to take the Q&A now.
Okay, so go for it.
Like I've just been the only one in here. Like, take a second now and everyone think about maybe a question you want to ask. It seems like maybe people haven't been super active during the talk. It's been a super great whistle stop tour. Thank you, Katrin.
You're more than welcome.
I have 1,000 questions, but I'm also like quite deep on this already, being very neurodivergent and at leadership level. So I don't want to like maybe steamroll, but if you want to pick one of those to start with while people are adding questions, I would love to.
I think they're brilliant on either. So Meg, I think everybody's already got a benefit from you having asked them. So yeah, I'll just take them first and then go to the next one. So you said, if we want to strengthen one of our stress responses or minimize the indexing, where should we start? So, I mean, first of all, like I said, is taking maybe that stress response assessment. So what you get is a bit of a percentage. It's quite a few questions. It only takes 3 to 5 minutes though. So I'm not asking you to sit down for half an hour. But it basically highlights very quickly as to where do you go, usually by default. And you really need to do this assessment very honestly. So don't pretend you're doing something else, because obviously there's no use to that. But what happens is either you come out with one stress response very, very clearly. So I just did this with the leadership group the other day, and they were all laughing. So we were in the room, they were taking this assessment, and then we were kind of working more. And we said, oh my gosh, that is so me. So I had a few people that had clear stress response sort of dominance, but then I also had a couple of people who had a bit of a mixed response, and that's absolutely okay. You know, you just maybe in different circumstances will be going into them. But I think the first point is literally just taking it really slowly and maybe digesting a bit in that kind of guide, in that little ebook. It's not like a big fat book. It's something that gives you a very quick sort of insight and just that realization, okay, yeah, it does drive my success first, but how quickly it can also backfire. Honestly, that is probably already the biggest like light bulb moment. I really wish I would have learned this in my psychology degrees. None of this was taught in none of the degrees that I did. But it's given me so much more true emotional intelligence in the moment, because we teach this in so much theoretical approaches, but what do we do actually with it? And then it's basically just, again, it's that shift framework. It's kind of realizing, okay, this would be my habit now, and then going completely with the opposite. So what I did first was I studied intensely what came out as my lowest response. So my flight response had no answers was on that. So that was 0%. And then I kind of thought, what would I learn now from a person that goes constantly into flight response? And it started to emulate this a bit as well, because obviously as a flight person, you're also in overactivation. So generally what I needed to do is just calm my energies down. So I learned a lot of calming techniques first. But I also have recognized that when I go into real collapse and burnout, I actually then go into total underactivation. So I then have absolutely no motivation, no drive, no life in my entire system anymore. So it's just kind of recognizing also, like, I have now gone into complete shutdown. Right now, if I did more calming exercises, it would make it worse. So that's where that agility part comes in. So the state matching of the techniques, it's not rocket science. Honestly, once you start to learn this a little bit, it becomes very powerful tools that anyone can learn and do in the moment as well. But yeah, so I think it's just like studying this a little bit. And again, in my book, I've kept this as simple as possible, so you don't feel like, oh, I don't know what she's talking about. That's all like clinical jargon now. I mean, I have obviously got a very strong background in teaching a lot of mental health in organizations as well. And this overactivation state is often what's associated with clinical anxiety, and underactivation is what's associated with clinical depression. But I really am moving away from all that pathologizing language. I don't think that's helpful. Even under the most severe circumstances, I have worked with people with the most severe mental health conditions in clinical settings as well. But I have also seen how much it backfires when we always pathologize all of this. Actually, it's that recognition we are just humans here, and this is totally normal, especially with all those modern stressors that are flying at us 24/7 almost these days as well. So Meg, I hope that I have answered that question a little bit. I'm very conscious there's some other questions coming through now as well. So I go to Chrissy's question first, and if you've got time, then we'll come to your second one as well. Can you tell us a bit about what coaching might look like with you versus traditional executive leadership coaching? Yes, Chrissy, thank you so much for asking that. This is so much more highly specialized. So I have done general executive coaching. I teach also coaching leadership styles in organizations as well. But what I have now brought into my particular coaching style is really helping you very quickly, rather than having to do all the research, etc. I help people in the one-on-one coaching so much quicker to identify what their stress response is, highlight where their blind spots are, and then literally work with what could be the best techniques now. So I build this up sort of very slowly at the beginning. I'm not wanting to bombard people with too many different techniques, but also just helping people to find what's their natural preference. So for some people, breathing exercises are really powerful and helpful. Other people want something that is a little bit more physical, or don't like the kind of mindfulness or meditation type of approaches as well. So I basically just shortcut this for you. I guide you much quicker down to what can you actually do. So the first month is usually quite intense, where we meet every week. And then after that first month, where I have got a little bit more of a grasp on what your particular blind spots and your real super strengths are as well, then basically people can just completely decide themselves whether they want to meet bi-weekly. So it's a very customized kind of coaching approach that I offer. And I never tie people in, by the way, as well. So this is really as long as I can provide value for you. But what I see is a lot of leaders often realize they start with themselves, but how much I help with coaching as well to take this actually into team context and really tackle some of those difficult dynamics and help you with people that have maybe a totally different response. Meg, sorry, you just had your hand up as well, I think.
I just wanted to make sure that I cut in and thanked you before we have to end. So I don't mean to cut you off at all. You can finish your thought if you like. Do you have anything else you want to add, Katrin?
I think I just wanted to say that somebody anonymously had also said, if you activate rather than deactivate, is it smart to find co-regulators, co-activators within your organization? I just wanted to say, absolutely, thumbs up. You completely got this. Sometimes you can find your ally, you know, somebody who's totally different to you. First, this might create conflict, but I recognized over the last few years, my gosh, they're my greatest teachers. So love that comment as well. Just wanted to say, whoever
Amazing.
contributed that, excellent.
Amazing. Well, I feel like this has been a really good whistle stop tour, and maybe something that all of us that came and are interested can continue to explore and like spread the word. It seems like working with you would be just really amazingly impactful for a lot of us, as we know that burnout is a really common thing amongst product leaders generally, but even more so with female product leaders. So research ongoing on this topic, but I think psychological safety is a very common thing that comes up for us here at FPL and across all of our events. So thank you so much for sharing your special knowledge with us and some of these tools that we can take and use straight away. And don't forget, everyone, to use this code. We'll be sharing the recording for this, and if you're okay with it, Kat, I'll make sure we share some of this information on the Slack group as well, just to make sure that others who would want to take advantage can do so. And thank you so much again.
That I'm on the Slack group as well, so if people want to message me there, then I'll be there as well.
Amazing, so glad. And if you're not a member of FPL, don't forget that you can join for free. Everything that we do is free. We have a free Slack safe space for female product leaders and allies of all genders. So please do join us, and we'd love to see you there. I think Bex just sent a link. Maybe that's the join link. Yes, thank you, Bex. And hope to see you all online for further conversations on this. I think I'd love to make a little sub-channel about emotional regulation as a leader. It'd be a really great interest channel for us to start up if anyone's up for it. But thank you again for being here.
Blow my mind, Katrin. Thank you so much.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic meeting all of you.